Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. And in this one, we're going to go over the MLB for Thursday, August the 14th. And as you can see, the opening odds are on the screen, and it is the same thing as in my notes. So we're just going to refer to the notes for now. Of course, these odds, the current odds, can change, but this is what we're going to go on here. Now, as you can see, the first game is Seattle versus Baltimore. Opening odds are, and of course we get the opening odds. Opening odds are the most telling. Seattle opened at minus 139. Baltimore opened at plus 108. Seattle currently is at minus 132, and currently they are at Baltimore is at plus 112. And the spread, also known as the run line, looks like this. Seattle is at minus 1.5 at plus 118 cost. Plus 1.5 is Baltimore at minus 142 cost. Over unders at 9.5 points. Minus 122 cost going over. Plus 100 going under. And we're going to go over where the money is going. Then we're going to go back to the expected value. Now, as you can see, the opening odds breakdown and game device is empty. All of that will be available on the Patreon. Link is in the description and in the video. But let's go over where the splits are, where the money is going. Scroll down real quick. Well, let me just scroll up, and that way we'll just enough to cover so that you can see all the odds right there. All right, money line looks like this. Seattle, 66% of the betting going with Seattle on the money line. Baltimore is at 34%. Percentage of money, Seattle 74%, Baltimore 26%. Spread percentage of bet, 60% going with Seattle, Baltimore 40%. Percentage of money on the spread, 47% going with Seattle, 53% going with Baltimore. Over under looks like this, and it is at 9.5. Over is getting currently, so basically it's about 50-50, 49% going over, 51% of the betting going under, 39% of the money going over, and 61% of the money going under for the total. Now, expected value. Expected value is based on the opening odds. For the opening, and the current odds are based on the current odds. That is also how we calculate win percentage as well. But expected value is the measure what a bettor can expect to win or lose on each bet placed on the same odds time and time again. And 55% win percentage going with Seattle, 45% with Baltimore based off the opening odds, opening money line odds. Current odds are the exact same win percentage based off the minus 132 for Seattle currently, plus 112 for Baltimore, and that is 55% and 45% currently. But the opening odds, that leaves Seattle expected value at negative $5.43. Baltimore expected value is at negative $6.40. And as you can see, currently Baltimore is still has more favor to the sports books currently based off the current odds, which means they're not moving really the odds too much. But of course, this can all change throughout the course of the day by the game time. This is the first game of the day. Expected value for Seattle currently is at minus 333, minus $3.33. Baltimore is at minus $4.60. All right, now what you want to look at is where this money is going. 74% going with Seattle, and their odds have declined. But this expected value has remained constant, with Baltimore being even higher of a favorite currently than they were before, but they're still a favorite. With that being said, look out for Baltimore could sneak and win this game at home as a dog. They are only getting 26% of the money. Sportsbooks would profit. Well, watch out where the sharps go in. Watch what happens to the splits when the odds go towards the. There we go. All right, that's better. 26% for Baltimore. Now you can see it better. And look out for what happens with that Baltimore money. If the sharps bet heavily on Baltimore, look out for Seattle. But as it remains, looks like Baltimore could take it, and expected value is given as well. The picks will be available on the Patreon. All right, Cubs versus Blue Jays. Chicago versus Toronto. And as you can see, the odds are on the screen. Opening for Chicago is at minus 130. And the numbers on the right have just been reduced, by the way. So 1 plus 30 is 31, 13 plus 0 is 13, 1 plus 3 plus 0 equals 4, and that's how we get those numbers. And we just apply that to the formulas if we apply that to the odds, if need be. Toronto opens at plus 105. Cubs currently, money line is at minus 106. And minus 110 currently for Toronto. Now, the Cubs spread that is minus 1.5 at plus 158, plus 1.5 at minus 192 for the Blue Jays. Over unders at 8.5, minus 108 cost going over, minus 112 going under. Sorry about that. And where the splits are going, let me show you that. Then we'll go over the expected value. Let me scroll down. All right, splits. Chicago, Toronto 50-50 on the spread. Percentage of money is 70% going with the Cubs, 30% going with the Blue Jays. Money line percentage of bets, 68% going with the Cubs, Toronto 32%. Percentage of money, the Cubs are at 50 and Toronto's at 50 as well, 50-50. Total percentage of bets, 62% going over, 38% going under. Percentage of money, over is getting 64%, under is getting 36%. Now, expected value, and the formula is below, and it is based off $100 wagers. Forgot to mention that in the first one. 54% win percentage based off the opening. That is based off these odds here. Based off this minus 130 plus 105. That gives Chicago 54% win percentage, and the Blue Jays 46% win percentage. Expected value for the Cubs minus $4.46. Toronto expected value minus $5.70. Currently, based off the minus 106, minus 110, basically 50-50 odds to win, minus $2.83 expected value going with the Cubs. Blue Jays expected value is at minus $4.55 expected value. So, based off where this money is going for the Cubs are getting, and they did decrease from minus 130 opening to minus 106. And their amount of money is at 50-50 on both teams. So basically, bettors are basically, well, split 50-50 based off the money, but not based off the betting. 68% going with the Cubs in this one, and it reflected on the opening. 70% of the money going with the Cubs on the spread. They are 8.5. The spread is at 1.5. Total's at 8.5. And plus 158 going with the Cubs. That could happen, but Toronto, there's a lot of money that sportsbooks could make, even based off this 33% of the money. 30% of the money. So, with that being said, the Cubs could win as long as Toronto is at a dog on the run line. But this minus 110 here is evident, and with Chicago going down to minus 106, they're going to have to increase that. But it does happen in baseball a lot where the winner will go down in odds, but they'll make it up somewhere else. So Chicago could take the ML and Toronto could take the run line here. But that over under, look out, the over is dominating at 8.5 at minus 108. I'll say this, whichever one ends up at minus 112 or higher, go with that value. Currently, I would fade the odds and go with that under. But let's go to the next one. All right. Miami versus Cleveland. Plus 108 opening for Miami. The Guardians are at minus 133. Currently, Miami's at plus 116, minus 136 for Cleveland. Miami plus 1.5 at minus 188 cost on the run line. Minus 1.5 for the Guardians at plus 155 cost. Over under 7.5, minus 118 cost going over, minus 104 going under. And win percentage, Miami win percentage 46% based off the opening odds. 46% going opening. Cleveland win percentage 54% based off that minus 133. Current win percentage 45% going with Miami on based off the plus 116, minus 136 money line. based off the minus 136, gives Cleveland a 55% win percentage, which gives them a negative $4.56 expected value, negative $2.80 expected value for Miami, negative $4.32 expected value for Miami opening, and minus $5.40 expected value for Cleveland. As you can see, sportsbooks rarely lose, but where you make your money off expected value is off the positive EV props, basically off the props with high probability, and it's a positive value. So basically, like the strikeouts, things like that, or the amount of outs given, things like that. That's what you would bet and make a positive expected value consistently, and you just place money based off that time and time again. It's called arbitrage. You basically place money based off both proportionately based off multiple sports books, and you just place odds after odds after odds after odds, and you eventually will win. But more than likely, you will go even if you go that route. That's why I do not always recommend that. But where is the money going in this one? 36% of the betting going with Miami on the run line, 64% going with the Guardians. Percentage of money on the run line, 20% going with Miami, and the run line is at 1.5 favoring Cleveland at plus 155 cost, minus 188 cost on Miami. Always look for base your picks off the highest negative value, because that's where the sports books really make their money. Highest negatives don't always win, but they win most of the time, especially when the percentages kind of suffer with it. And as you can see, only 20% of the money is going to this minus 188 cost. 80% going with Cleveland. Money line percentage of bets, 44% going with Miami, 56% going with Cleveland. Percentage of bets money line for Miami, 63%. Money line percentage of money, going with the Guardians, 37%. Total is at 7.5, relatively low. The higher cost going with the over at minus 118, 90% and 94% going over. So they are getting most of that money, but I would dare to challenge that and fade the public and go with that under 7.5. It is the lowest, one of the lowest totals of the day. And this minus 104 will not hold up. You will probably see this become minus 115 or minus 114 or something. Like, it could be minus 118 and this ends up minus 104 by the time the game starts. So just keep that in mind. With Cleveland at this 136 current money line, and Miami getting as a dog getting this minus 188, there is a chance Cleveland could get this across the board. But what has to increase for Cleveland is this 37%. Cleveland gets this across the board if this 37% increases. Keep that in mind. And this minus 188 is critical, with them getting only 20% of the money and 80% going off this plus 155. So obviously, if if Miami wins the game, Cleveland will not win this spread. Obviously, and the sports books will not be paying out that 80% plus 155. That's a lot of money to pay out. That's an individual bet that could change your life if you bet on it. But just keep that in mind. Look out for Miami on the run line and Cleveland on the money line, or Cleveland across the board if they go over that 40th percentile on the money line. Let's go with the next one. Phillies versus Nationals. Minus 233 for opening for the Phillies, plus 178 for Washington, minus 215 for the Phillies, and plus 180 for Washington. Minus 1.5 spread at minus 137 for the Phillies. Washington plus 1.5 at plus 114 on the run line, that is. Over unders at 8.5, minus 122 cost going over, plus 100 going under. And expected value looks like this: 66% win percentage for the Phillies, 34% win percentage for the Nationals. That gives the Phillies negative $5.67 expected value and negative $5.48 expected value. Now, if you want to calculate expected value manually, the formula is beneath right here, and you could calculate that, but you could just use a computer, use a EV calculator. 66% based off this minus 215 plus 180. That gives the Phillies a 66% win percentage and 34% win percentage for Washington. That also gives the Phillies an expected value of minus $3.30. And the expected value for Washington has become minus $4.80. Now, let's see where the money is going in this one. Then we'll base our picks based off of what this is going to do. 85% going with the Phillies on the betting on the run line, and they're at minus 137 cost, favored at 1.5 runs. 74% of the money going with the Phillies on the run line. 82% of the betting and 86% of the money going with the Phillies on the run line, and the over is getting, on the total, is getting 76% and 78% of the betting and the money respectively. So with that being said, look out for this under here at plus 100. Those are always dangerous, but this minus 122, I would go with that pick currently until this 22% goes up. Even if these odds stay the same, I would recommend going with the under only if this goes up. If it doesn't go up, stick with the over. Now, with the Phillies being so dominant in this one on the road, even their higher negative on the spread, I would go with the Phillies across the board and challenge those positive values, even though they're getting a relatively low percentage. Sportsbooks can make a killing off that game, but that's only as it currently states, as it currently shows. And yeah, let's go with the Mets versus the Braves versus the Mets. Plus 175 for the Braves, minus 233 for the Mets, plus 166 for Atlanta currently, and minus 198 currently money line for the Mets. Plus 1.5 spread at minus 125 cost, minus 1.5 spread at plus 104 cost. Over unders at 8.5, minus 115 going over cost, and under is getting minus 105 cost. And as you know, the minus 105s hit more so than the minus 115s, especially on the totals. Win percentage for Atlanta based off the opening plus 175 looks like this: 34% win percentage, 66% win percentage for the Mets. That gives Atlanta a huge expected value for the bookies at minus $6, negative $6.50. And that gives the Mets a negative $5.67. So most of the opening odds do start higher, higher negative expected value. Current looks like this: Atlanta 36% win percentage, and the Mets 64% win percentage. That gives Atlanta an expected value of negative $4.24, and the Mets a negative $3.68 expected value. Let's see where the money is going in this one. All right, Atlanta run line 15% going with the Braves, 85% on the betting on the run line going with the Mets. Percentage of money on the run line: 6% going with the Braves, 94% going with the Mets. Money line looks like this: 18% going with of the betting, percentage of betting going with the Braves, 82% going with the Mets. Percentage of money: 14% going with the Braves and 86% going with the Mets. Over under is at 8.5. And the over is getting 86% of the betting and 69% of the money. And currently, I would go with whichever one has this higher negative here. Whichever one has this higher negative here. Whichever one has that minus 105, has the 105, I would go with that one. Confidently go with that one. But currently, it is under 8.5. Now, that can change. I seen it flip yesterday with the game. Minus 115 and minus 105 flipped from the over to the under, and the under ended up getting it. So this could flip and go from under to the over. So just keep that in mind. With the Mets getting 86% and 82% of the money on the money line based off this minus 198. And even though they're getting a higher negative expected value, I would definitely consider going with the Mets at home as it currently stands only. But always beware of home favorites. Always beware of home favorites. And they're getting this plus 104 at 94% here. So people betting heavily on the Mets, but don't sleep on Atlanta until this value goes up. The 6% of the money on the run line. They could get that run line since they are a dog. If the Mets getting the ML. But Detroit versus Minnesota. Minus 122 opening money line for Detroit. Minnesota is at plus 171. Currently, Detroit is at minus 210. Minnesota is at plus 176. And the spread looks like this. Detroit is favored at 1.5 runs at minus 125 cost. 1.5 runs underdogs are the Twins at plus 104 cost. Over unders at 7.5, minus 112 going over, minus 108 going under. Now, percentage of betting for Detroit, 65% and 35% going with Minnesota. Now, expected value, minus $5.72, minus $5.15 expected value for Detroit and Minnesota respectively. Current expected value, and that is based off this minus 210 plus 176. That gives Detroit a 65% and 35% win percentage for Minnesota. Same thing as the current. But they do lower their expected values respectively. Negative $4.05 expected value for the Tigers and negative $3.40 expected value for the Twins. But let's see where the money is going in this one. 85% and 78% respectively betting to money on the run line for the Tigers. Money line percentage of bets 82 and 91. So people betting heavily on the Tigers in this game, as well as the over on the total. 81% of the betting going over and 75% going over on that total, and that has a lot to do with this low total. You have to kind of challenge. Now, I would join the public only because of this minus 112 cost, but obviously that can change. Eventually, if these odds change at all, I'm going under 7.5 in this game at this minus 108 cost. I'm going under in that game. But that 91% for the Tigers, based off this current money line, and they're getting the advantage here as well. Detroit looks good across the board in this one as the odds currently show. But that's what I would go with. Let's go to the last game. Arizona versus Colorado. Diamondbacks versus Rockies. All right, Arizona opening money line minus 179 cost. Opening money line for Colorado plus 130. Arizona minus 174 cost. Colorado plus 146. Spread. Arizona minus 1.5 cost plus 1.5. Minus 1.5 run, that is. Plus 1.5 for Colorado. Cost for Arizona on the run line minus 118 and minus 102 cost for Colorado. In that strain, because normally when you get minus 118, you get minus 104, but not in this instance. And I'm going to show you why in a moment. Over under is at 12. Super high total for this one. Minus 110, minus 110 even cost for the totals. And expected value for Arizona. 60% win percentage based off the minus 179 opening. Plus 130 opening is based, 40% win percentage based off the plus 130 opening for Colorado. That gives Colorado an expected value opening of $8. Negative $8. Arizona expected value opening at minus $6.48. Obviously that is super high. They reduced these obviously big time. With the current odds, Arizona percent win percentage. That is to keep integrity of the sports books alive. Of course, they make money hand over fist, but too many people be discouraged to bet if you keep the odds too high and in favor of the sports books. You got to give the bettors an advantage somewhere. But 61% win percentage. Going with Arizona based off the minus 174 current money line. 39% win percentage based off the plus 146 money line for Colorado. That gives respectively. Arizona a negative $3.94 expected value, and Colorado a negative $4.06 expected value. And of course, those are based off $100 wages. Formula is below that. All right. Spread percentage of bets 64% going with Arizona, 36% going with Colorado. Percentage of money Arizona 87%, Colorado 13%. Moneyline percentage of bets 85% going with Arizona, 15% going with Colorado. Percentage of money 89% going with Arizona, Colorado 11%. Now total percentage of bets over under 56% going over, under is getting 44. Percentage of money over is getting 58%, under is getting 42%. That is based off this 12 total right here. You're probably going to see a lot of people going under, but the totals have been relatively high lately. I would go over that total, and with Arizona getting 15 with 89% and 85% of the betting and 89% of the money and 87% of the money on the run line. There's a lot of money for the sports books to cash out. Arizona looks good across the board. It's hard to go against that, especially with this minus 118 being so high. But I'm looking at this minus 102, which is why I would consider Colorado. I would consider Colorado seriously if these odds hold up. If they continue getting 89%, which I don't think will happen, and 85% of the betting here on the money line, I would consider going with Colorado across the board based off this minus 102 run line here. That is a strange run line when you compare it to the minus 108, which is normally opposed to the minus 104. Now, keep in mind this minus 102 is a very significant number in sports, a lot like the number 12. A very significant number in sports. Look out for Colorado could sneak and get this one. They could sneak and get this one, but currently I would go with Arizona across the board. But yeah, pray every day. I've been Scott. Picks will be on my Patreon, as well as the game advice and betting breakdown. And that will be on the Patreon. Link is in the description and in the video. Pray every day. I've been Scott. You guys take care.